Hello everybody and welcome to this video in which myself and my dear chums here are going to rank the 7 studio albums by Queens of the Stone Age. Stoner rock is what people call them. I think they sort of transcend that a little bit. But that's what we're doing here today. I'm Dobby. I am hosting because I am a little bit of a fanboy when it comes to Queens of the Stone Age. And I'm joined by single name Craig over there in the red.
That's what they call me. Single name Craig on a single path to rank.
And double name Tom Baker in the middle there with the cap.
We are here to basically keep Dobby in check, because if it wasn't for us, Dobby would put pretty much everything in S tier and it would be a very, very boring video.
Yeah, to be clear, Queens of the Stone Age are one of my absolute favorite bands. I adore Queens of the Stone Age with every essence of my being. Every essence of my being.
Even your toenail.
Even my toenail. Even my currently cut far too short toenail. That's actually giving me a little bit of bother. Yeah, if I were doing this on my own, I think there's only one album that wouldn't be in A or S. But since these boys are here, they're going to try and keep me in check as best they can.
That one album, that's going to go in S. Above S, it's a super S.
Do you reckon so? A U for unmarked. If you're in the UK and taking your levels, you don't want a U. Your levels, your A levels, I wanted to say. How would you describe yourselves as Queens of the Stone Age fans, guys? I know Craig's there, probably in the middle of me and Tom in terms of fandom. Is that fair to say?
Queens of the Stone Age, I really enjoyed Songs for the Deaf when I was in secondary school. That was a really good album, really just a good old rocking time, I would say.
A good old rocking time.
And then from there...
Rolling Stone writer over here.
Exactly. UpsideDownShark.com for all your music reviews.
For all your good rocking times.
I've never really fully engulfed myself with them like I have done for other bands. I know of some of their songs, and I like most of the songs I've heard from them. So when we had the idea to do this, I listened back to everything, and well, we'll find out, won't we? But yeah, I would say they're on a plus list somewhere for me.
How many times seen them live, Craig?
Twice. Once at Glastonbury when they had a fan.
The fan set list.
The fan set list, yep.
Yeah.
And he said I could probably, predict what all the songs would be, and I think he did. And the same gig you were at, but I can't remember where that
Finsbury
was.
Park.
Finsbury Park.
For I can't think what it was. It wasn't like a proper festival, but it was a
summertime.
No, not in Finsbury Park. It was
just like a one-day festival with bands I think Queens of the Stone Age like. So like Run the Jewels and the Hives were there.
Their own curated thing, yeah. That was in 2018, 4 years ago. Last time I saw them as well. They are maybe the most consistently brilliant live band I've ever seen. Potentially, maybe that's a story for another day, though.
As that sentence goes on, I'm losing confidence more.
I like the only word I could use to describe Queens of the Stone Age as a live band is badass. Not just the music, but just the sort of full frontal assault that is them coming at you live. Tom, I
was just going to say, is that one word or hyphenated?
All of the above.
Okay.
What about you, Tom?
Like swearing either.
I don't swear. I'm not a swearer.
No.
Tom, how do you feel about Queens of the Stone Age in your day-to-day life?
See, I've had a Queens of the Stone Age in my life for a very, very long time. I'm a little bit younger than you both, but I still remember listening to Scuzz or Kerrang or whatever it was back when I was like 6 or 7, because my dad was into that kind of music, and listening to the singles, No One Knows, Go With the Flow, before really realizing what that video is all about, and and a bunch of other things. But then I think I probably fell off a little bit. Like, I listened to the singles. I think was it 3 and 7s was on one of the
on Eva Vulgaris, yeah.
It was.
Oh, you're on the Guitar Hero.
Guitar Hero, yeah. So yeah, obviously I listened to that, but it wasn't until about 2014, with a year after like Clockwork came out, where I really started to actually sit down and listen to their entire discography. Again, sort of attributed to the fact I saw them at Reading Festival that year. Yeah. I was super impressed with their set then. And ever since then, I wouldn't say they're in my sort of the pantheon of my favorite bands, but they're a band that I definitely go back to. And the more I listen to them and the more I find out about them, the more I really dig them. They're a band like an ogre, full of layers. And yeah, I've even sort of been introduced to other bands which I would sort of qualify in some of my favorites, like Screaming Trees, through Mark Lanigan's work with Queens of the Stone Age and everything. So they're definitely a band that I've come to appreciate a lot more in my latter years, despite still kind of being hopefully in my formative years. And definitely appreciate them a lot more than I probably did as a child. They're a mature thinking man's band is probably what I'm trying to say.
How many times have you seen them live? Just the once?
Just the once, but I would
At the
hope
Reading. I mean, that Reading set was great. And it was a really good night. They were on after Paramore, and those two together, just astounding. I've seen them 4 times. I saw them twice on Like Clockwork and twice on Villains Tour. Every time was just astoundingly good. I love them so much. They're a band I find, I mean, I don't drink when I go to gigs anyway, but I sort of lose myself in a way when I'm at a Queens of the Stone Age show that I don't lose myself in many times in life. Okay, well, we're here to rank the 7 albums. Had both of you heard all of these albums in full before we came to do this?
I don't think I'd listened to Villains all the way through before this, which, not to spoil too much, I may not listen to it all the way through again. So yeah, but that was the only one. All the others I definitely listened to all the way through.
Craig?
I've listened to Songs of the Deaf, songs
for the Deaf.
Multiple times throughout my life. I think I gave a listen to Eva Vulgaris when it came out, and before or after we saw them live in 2019, someone bought me Villains as a gift on vinyl. So going through these, for this video, I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. Okay.
Now I know all of them in full.
We start.
Question.
Okay. What is? Who sings on the first track of Lullabies to Paralyze? Craig?
Not Josh.
He's right. There we go.
That is Mark Lanigan.
On the first song, it's Billy Gibbons, isn't it? Is that this lullaby?
Michael Flanagan.
No, it's Mark Lanigan, I think.
Am I getting my wires crossed?
I'll ask you a question, Dobby.
Go ahead.
What is the first album that will be ranking in this Queens of the Stone Age ranking video?
Well, it is Mark Lanigan. Sorry, Tom, I got that completely wrong. I was thinking of a very different song. Yes, thank you, Craig. The first album we'll be doing is the first Queens of the Stone Age album, which is, funnily enough, self-titled Queens of the Stone Age. It was released in 1998. I mean, I guess we'll touch on briefly Caius. Ivor, you listen to Caius very much?
Again, only after already listening to Queens of the Stone Age, and you can definitely hear that influence in this album. This is about as stoner rockery as Queens of the Stone Age would ever get, and there's definitely that. Not a hangover, because that's a negative attribute, because
it's sleaze, isn't it? It's a sleazy album.
Yeah, I like Caius. Again, not a band that I've dived into enough, but yeah, there's definitely that lingering sort of feeling of that act in this one.
For sure. Do you ever listen to Caius very much, Craig?
No idea what the hell you're on about.
No? Cool. We'll leave it that way.
Can I ask a question, sorry, before?
Yeah, go.
What is the definition of stoner rock?
Queens of the Stone Age.
Queens of the Stone Age. It's kind of, sort of, I think it's typically typified by a sort of, it was like a California scene. I don't know if it's fully originated there or whatever. It was a California desert scene. It was just sort of music that was being played at like
Burning Man.
Not necessarily Burning Man. What are they called? They were like parties they had in the LA desert overnight, and just would play music all night, and just generally make themselves happy and stuff, I guess is a wonderful way of putting that, but my brain wasn't working in that moment for some reason. It's music for stoners, I guess is the best way to put it. It's the sort of thing, I guess, you're going to listen to, and perhaps when you're stoned, just be like, oh wow, listen to this.
Okay.
Yeah, you can normally attribute sort of slow G riffs, like sort of like down-tuned guitars. I think the bands like Monster Magnet, there's a really good one actually that are pretty on the nose called Bongzilla, who basically do Black Sabbath-esque riffs and melodies, but with like black metal vocals over the top, and that's pretty fun.
So, because I know that them Crooked Vultures are described as stoner rock, and when I listen to them, I can hear it. But with this band, Queens of the Stone Age, I was like, this just sounds like good rock to me. I don't know. So genres still just a complete waste of everyone's time.
I think in regards to the first Queens of the Stone Age album, I think the stoner is very much there. I think that's sort of it's music where you listen to it and you can have a lovely time. It's just wonderful rock music, and then you sort of start to really dig into it, and you can sort of see yourself losing it, as you know, losing grip on reality a little bit, I guess, if you were so inclined. This first album it's, you know what, when it comes to Queens of the Stone Age, I don't often stick this album on if I feel like listening to Queens of the Stone Age, but when I do listen to this album, I find it's really good. I think, you know, the idea of everything that Queens of the Stone Age would end up being is very well, perhaps not necessarily the last album at the very least, but is very much clear here. I think you can see through lines throughout every album of Queen's discography from this very beginning.
Yeah, I feel like this is, you can tell this is an act that are starting from zero. They've got a wealth of experience going to this album that I think shines through in their songmanship. However, I would say of all of the Queens of the Stone Age albums, because as I'm sure you're both in the same camp as me, this is an album that I visited after already listening to quite a significant chunk of their discography. It is quite meat and potatoes compared to some of the more weirder avant-garde stuff they would go on to do, which I personally prefer a bit. So again, there's nothing necessarily wrong about it, but there's nothing that I feel, oh, I want to listen to some Queens of the Stone Age, I'm gonna go listen to the self-titled. It's nice, and it's as you say, it's got all of that elements there, but it's a little more in their own way middle of the road compared to what they would go on to do.
Craig, so you must have heard this fresh for this, Craig.
Yes, that is correct. So I already know the comments in this video is going to be like, they're ranking them and he doesn't even know the nuances of all these albums. That's my internet voice. Thank you, commenters. So listening to this, as I pretty much what Tom said, really, you can see that they've got experience. It's not the sort of Linkin Park situation where they're feeling themselves out, and by the third album, they're like, okay, we need to actually, you know, figure out what we're going to do to make this new metal thing continue. Queens of the Stone Age, like, we're a rock band. This is our rock music. And as it goes on over time, it's more of a refinement, a bit more experimental, but not too much, because at the, you know, antithesis of it all, they are still a rock band. And for a rock band, this is a good rock album to start with, I thought.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite songs, guys? I mean, I'll throw it out. Like Regular John is the first track on this album, and I love Regular John so very much. I think the album ends very well with I Was a Teenage Hand Model as well. It's like, that's a very odd song. You got like Mexicola in the middle. I really like You Would Know.
Is it Hispanic Impressions is the instrumental?
Yeah.
I really dig that. I would think if I was going to have like a wrestling theme, I think that would be up there in terms of like my entrance music. And yeah, you know, it's not often that an instrumental sticks out, but I really do dig that one. And a lot of stoner rock is instrumental as well. If you listen to bands like High on Fire, they I think they're almost exclusively instrumental. So that's definitely another byproduct of that genre.
Regular John was such a strong opener for me when I listened to this album. I was just like, yeah, because as you mentioned, I had listened to this after I listened to the rest. I thought there was going to be like some sort of build up or something of that nature, but then just open it up and it seems like they're swinging straight away. Just I really enjoyed it.
Very much a come out swinging start.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start talking about where we want to put this then. I think I mean, you two guys have said, you know, it feels, Tom said it feels a bit meat and potatoes. Perhaps if I, you know, would you say in regards to the rest of the catalog we're about to start ranking, would you say this is perhaps middle of the road?
Yeah, I was thinking high C, low B. And as always, we sort of caveat this by saying this is a ranking in the context of the discography. If we were to rank these in terms of just music in general, we'd whack them all in high, you know, high tiers. But basic in the context that we're talking about, I would say high C maybe.
Okay. Do we put artwork in there, because this artwork's really doing it for me?
I bet it is.
Thirsty
boy. It's funny when it comes to Queens of the Stone Age artworks. I don't think they necessarily got
a theme.
a theme. I think there's some great artwork.
Oh, yeah.
When we get to Boneface's stuff, I think Boneface is great, and I only really know him off the back of the Queen's work he's done. This, in terms of artwork, is
It
a
doesn't
woman.
look like, when I saw this, I was like, is this what it used to be like for album covers? Because it just doesn't fit in with what I know of Queens of the Stone Age, bizarrely.
It's an odd one. It's certainly the outlier when it comes to Queen's albums, I think. I don't really know how I feel about it as an album cover, to be honest. It's just sort of there.
In your face.
This is the only Queens of the Stone Age album I don't own on vinyl, and I don't think the album covers anything to do with it. But I mean, I'd feel a little bit awkward sort of pulling it out of my box, I suppose.
Out of your where?
Out of my box, my vinyl box, which is right there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's there.
Very good.
Okay.
What are you giving it, Dobby?
It's interesting. Like I said up front, if I were being honest, I think the lowest I would give anything is a B. Trying to be objective. I think. Oh, is this no?
Drum roll.
I guess, yeah, probably B or C is probably fair. On the caveat that obviously we're doing all of these and trying to spread them out a little bit. Probably.
What does your heart say?
My heart would put this in A, but I would go low. Or it depends how controversial I feel about the next one.
Tom, you said we're here to rein him in. I don't think.
And we're putting it in high C. Craig, what are you doing?
Well, originally I was thinking A, but
for goodness sake.
I think we put it B. I think it goes B.
All
Did
right.
Tom just say godness sake?
Oh, for goodness sake.
I think it will maybe end up being a low B.
Okay.
But I also think come the end of this video, this might be one of those ones where we're going to have to do a bit of fixing.
Jiggery pokery.
A little bit of jiggery pokery.
So you're saying you're already annoyed by the way these are being placed and we've just one in?
The problem is, when it comes to the first two Queens of the Stone Age albums, I find it so difficult to separate the two of them, but I do think I have a clear favorite of the two, and I think it's controversial that my favorite is the first of the two. Well, that brings us to 2000's rated R. This is kind of more of the same but refined, and I dare say, you've got the other vocalists of the band are coming forward. Nick Oliveri, I'm pretty sure we first hear Mark Lanigan. No, do we hear Mark Lanigan on this one?
No, he came.
No, he came on Songs for the Deaf.
Yeah,
that's me like stepping all over my apparent fandom, isn't it? Really. A lot of people love Rated R. I'm sure within this very chat, people love Rated R. I love Rated R. I adore Rated R. The only reason I say I prefer the first album to this is because I think Rated R tails off a little bit. Not in as much as I think the back end of the album is bad. I think there are two songs on this album I would very happily remove. There's nothing on the first album I'd remove. Obviously you got a feel good hit of the summer reprise. We don't need that, but there's a song called Quick and to the Pointless, which I would say is one of my least favorite. No, it definitely is one of my least favorite Queen songs. Dare I say it's my least favorite Queen song, and I think the lyrics certainly don't help it nowadays, to be honest. What do you guys think about Rated R? Let's start with Craig this time. Had you heard this one before?
I had. I didn't actually know the original cover was blue.
Yeah.
But I think the red cover pops more. So I did know of the song Feel Good Hit of the Summer, because I believe it's been played just outside of this album in so many different things. And I think this is Queens of the Stone Age, but I'm gonna mention Linkin Park again. Meteora is like 0.5. This feels like a 0.7. It's like, okay, we know what we're doing now. We're getting there. But as you said, it does go on a little bit. And it's like, did either of you enjoy Lightning Song, the instrumental?
I do really like Lightning Song,
Yeah. I thought the instrumental on the first album maybe just picked it to the post a little bit more. So yeah, there you go. Take that, comments.
I don't know about war. It depends how much you love the Queen's sound. If you want something more Queens in terms of just sheer bombacity, I guess you'd go for Hispanic impressions. But Lightning Song is, I like Lightning Song for what it is.
So I enjoy this album. I think it ratchets it up But at this point, you know, I'm still just like, yeah, I'm enjoying it. Let's go. Let's keep going.
It kind of feels like Queen stepping into who they are, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Tom, rated R.
So this is the album that's got my favorite Queens of the Stone Age song.
I think it might have. Oh, does it have my? It's tough. It might have my favorite.
We need a supercut of Dobby going. Oh,
it's just going to be half hour of me just really struggling.
What's your favorite Queen song?
If it's not The Lost Art of Keeping a Secret, it's Someone's in the Wolf.
Interesting. See, mine is in the Fade.
In the Fade is great.
Yeah, because I've talked about it a couple of times already, but I think I prefer Mark Lanigan's voice to Josh Homme's. So
Ooh, I mean, I love Mark Lanigan's voice. I really do love Mark Lanigan's voice, but I'm a bit of a Homme fanboy when it comes to music.
There is no doubt of that. Yeah, I think this is a superior album in almost every way. I think this is them moving more into the alternative rock vibe and sort of stepping out of the tropes of stoner rock. That you know, identity is still very much there, but they're you know, definitely gearing up towards a more unique sound. I think Feel Good Hit of the Summer, as much as it is, you know, apparently at the time it was like a real sort of like frat boy thing, because it's like, oh my god, listen to all the drugs they're talking about in it. But it's still a real good song. And I think that through line goes through. I think this is a more the track list fits together. The flow of this album is much nicer than the self-titled as well. I think you can listen to this as sort of a more cohesive piece than the self-titled. And yeah, I think you are absolutely right, Dobby, that I think that Nick Oliveri, I think he was on the first album as well. I could be wrong about that, but anyway, he definitely comes more into his own on this album, and that went, and yeah, we're getting to there, but we are definitely working our way up to the peak of where they would get to very shortly.
Yeah. This one's going to be like, I guess I look at Queens of the Stone Age albums in pairs a little bit. At least the first two always sit together for me. The self-titled and rated R are sort of two parts of the same coin, the head and tail, as it were. And it's really, depending on the day you ask me, one or the other is going to be my favorite. I do think today I'm coming down on Queens of the Stone Age being my preference over rated R, which to a lot of people is going to be very controversial, but I think to a lot of people is going to be bang on the money. When it comes to Queens of the Stone Age, it's so tough to rate these albums.
And yet here we are doing
and
it.
Here we are. This, you know what? I was really excited when we decided we were going to do something. Yeah, I love talking about Queens of the Stone Age, and then the sort of the realism of what we have to do. You know what I mean?
Someone's got to do this hard job. Dobby.
Someone's got to do it. Craig, do you have a preference of the two?
I think the first album I would listen to over this one before. I just think I can't put my finger on it, but I just feel like there's more of a rougher edge to the first one.
Perhaps a little more polished to the second one.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? And I mean, we've not even mentioned songs like Better Living Through Chemistry, which is just one of the best things. You know what I mean? Better Living Through Chemistry is just astoundingly good. That would also be, you know, probably top 5 when it comes to Queens of the Stone Age for me. I mean, Tom is definitely going to put rated R. I'm inclined to put rated R into A, purely because I know there are times when I think it is a stronger album. With that said, though, I know what's coming and how much I love what's coming, and so I think I'm going to go B, but I would put it above Queens of the Stone Age.
I'm okay with that.
Against my better judgment right now.
Can we rename this video "The Existential Crisis of Dobby"?
Well, we've not got a name for it yet. We can just name it that. We'd have to rename it.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Above B, so highest B right now.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's been done. Let's make it happen. And now we come to, you know, the hit factory. You can't even really call it the hit factory when it comes to Queens of the Stone Age. You just kind of got to call it the masterpiece, I guess.
Tell me how you feel about this album, Dobby.
I mean, I love Songs for the Deaf. Everyone loves Songs for the Deaf, surely.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf is, you know, a little bit untouchable. Is it my favorite Queens of the Stone Age album? No, we'll get to that.
Oh. Interesting.
I dare I say there are more than one albums I prefer to Songs for the Deaf in Queens of the Stone Age's back catalogue. But I mean, No One Knows is the song everyone knows by Queens of the Stone Age.
Everyone knows it, ironically.
Everyone knows No One Knows. Even people who don't like rock music know No One Knows. It's one of those, you know, it was an MTV staple. It was just huge. Then you come to something like Go With The Flow, which is just an astounding song as well. A full force of just, you know, a barrage of just guitars in your face with Dave Grohl on the drums as well. Because I mean, Songs for the Deaf has Dave Grohl on the drums. Immediate tick, isn't it? You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, what can we say about Songs for the Deaf that hasn't been said before? Does anyone want to try?
It's an S tier. It's my favorite Queens of the Stone Age album. I was going to say the 3-track run of No One Knows, First Is Giveth, and Songs for the Dead is amazing. And then I was like, oh yeah, but no, then The Sky Is Falling happens after that. Oh no, 6 Shoot happens after that. You just say the whole run of the album is just freaking amazing.
Okay, so 2 things I want to say there. First of all, you're skipping You Think I Ain't Worth a Dollar?
Well, yeah, but like I'm starting with just like, you know, the hit. Oh no, I love that because
Millionaire might be the best opening song in Queen's catalog.
It's definitely the most, I feel like it's the most abrasive. But yeah, I mean, I think I couldn't remember who said it, but I was doing some research before this video, and the people said that when it comes to like just the actual sort of production of the album, this is one of the loudest albums to ever be created, and you feel it by the end of it. Like, this is a sonic assault in the best possible way. And it, don't get me wrong, there's a couple of moments where it knows where to dial it back, but they are few and far between. And it sometimes, if you listen to this album and then go into anything else afterwards, it can take a bit of adjustment, because it is like you have been going through like a class 5 hurricane or something like that. But yeah, it's still one of the loudest, most chaotic, most just most unadulterated rock albums of the past 20 years or so. And I think you're right. I think in terms of its cultural impact, and in terms of, at least in my opinion, its quality, it's untouchable. I mean, you've got Josh Homme, Nick Oliveri, and Dave Grohl at their most chaotic best. Probably more so Nick Oliveri than the rest of them, because I think this is his last album before they literally was like, you're too much.
This is the peak of anything Nick Oliveri has ever done. I mean, you know what I mean?
He wore less clothes making this album than any man has ever worn less clothes before.
The most less clothes.
The most less clothes. Yeah. I don't think that they would have been able to ever top this, because I feel like if they were to make another album like this, it probably would kill them, because mainly Nick Oliveri than anything else. But yeah.
I mean, it's funny, like musically, I don't think it's something they'll ever top or have ever topped, but personal preference and nostalgia and just the time in which you hear something will obviously play more of a role when it comes to ranking your favorites. Craig, Songs for the Deaf.
2 negatives.
Yeah.
The real Song for the Deaf, not needed. The radio DJ stuff, it's good. It makes you feel like you're on a car journey. It's not good when you're trying to make other playlists. That's
the downside, isn't it? It's playlists, and I mean, I'm a big old playlist boy. It does kind
That's
of
what we call you.
Yeah, they call me that. It does get in the way a little bit of moving these songs, but in terms of therefore listening to it as an album, it feels like such a complete work, I guess. It feels wrong to take it apart.
Like Tom said, it's the loudest. I think the radio DJ bits makes it feel like there is no downtime. It feels like it's just constant, and there's no room to breathe. So if you're going to listen to this with headphones, you're probably going to have tinnitus by the end of it and feel knackered. So yeah, but that's the only 2 things. Apart from that, you two have already covered it.
Okay, so here's a thing then. If you had to remove one song from Songs for the Deaf, what song would you remove? Shall I start? Because there is only one I'm not overly keen on, and that is 6 Shooter, which I know Tom has already said he quite likes.
Oh, that's so
the real
tough.
Song for the Deaf. There you go. I did it.
Because I can't believe you don't like the real Song for the Deaf. I love a Song for the Deaf.
Huh.
When we saw them at Finsbury Park, and their encore, they went off after Little Sister, and they came back and did a Song for the Deaf into a Song for the Dead. And oh my God, it was chaos.
You know, I'm talking about the real Song for the Deaf, you know, the just the what, and then just the low bass.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, I completely misunderstood what you were saying there. Yeah.
Like, get rid of that. It's track 0. It's not even needed, right? That's how much they want it. I do apologize. I should have clarified.
No, I should have had that, to be fair. I was just like, I was too ready to be outraged.
What?
I think if I was to pick one song, and this is again purely personal preference, because I feel like in my life I've been oversaturated to it. It's probably no one knows. I love it. It's a good song, but because I listen to it basically every day of my life from probably about the age of 7 until the age of like whenever Scuzz went off TV, which 2018. I was just like, okay, I've had my fill of that song now, and to the point where you sort of get that negative Pavlovian response, like, you know, where you would just flick the channel to another music station until you weren't, oh, that's something new. But yeah, just wow, it's like, okay.
Thank goodness we've got Twitter instead of flicking through all the music channels now. Life is better now. Can we all agree on that?
No, I don't know. I used to love flicking through the music channel.
I loved Scuzz and Kerrang.
Are we putting this in S?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we'd be remiss not to, really, wouldn't we?
Scuzz.
It feels very obvious to put it in S, but I mean, where else would you put it? I think if you were putting it in A, you'd be doing a disservice to everyone involved. Right, then we come to Lullabies to Paralyze, 2005. Now, quite the act to follow, Songs for the Deaf. And Lullabies to Paralyze, depending on who you ask, maybe doesn't even qualify as a good album. I disagree wholeheartedly, by the way. I think obviously coming at it after Songs for the Deaf, you know, maybe you are going to think this isn't as good. I'm going to tell you, I think I might prefer Lullabies to Paralyze. I love Lullabies to Paralyze. I think Lullabies to Paralyze is fucking great. With one caveat, it does fall off a cliff towards the end. I like, when it comes to, like, this is my ultimate Halloween album. I love this album. I listen to this album every Halloween because I just think it nails the tone perfectly. It's unsettling, it's dark, but it's got that tongue-in-cheek that you want from Queens of the Stone Age. I love Lullabies to Paralyze. Tom is giving all sorts of looks here. So
you went through a journey there, because like, you first of all, you were saying, oh, it was like, you know, not even a good album. I was like, what? And then you're like,
some people, yeah, I've seen people say that.
And then you were like, oh, but it's my favorite animal.
My favorite animal is Lullabies to Paralyze.
My favorite animal. Like, what? It's like so many extremes in that. I would think I fit in the middle. I absolutely agree that there was no way they were going to be able to replicate or top anything in the style of songs, because it was, you know, it was an extremity of an album. And I think they went down the right path by making something that was a bit more sort of reserved and menacing, but we're not in a like overtly like spooky scary skeletons type of way, but it isn't as good for me. And it's got highlights, like, as you say, like tracks like Little Sister. I think until I like deep dived into their discography and sort of, you know, looked up, that was the single that I loved the most. Like, I just loved that song.
All about that cowbell.
You got to have more cowbell, baby. But yeah, I feel like a little bit was lost when they got rid of Nick, and I think it shows in this album.
It's funny because I think if I were to, you know, sit and think about every person who played with Queens of the Stone Age, Nick Oliveri is very close to the bottom for me. Really? Like I love his bass work, but I think I can't help but think of him as a person. I just don't get on with who he is as a person. I've not met him, but also, I mean,
an awful person.
Well, I mentioned Quick and to the Pointless on Rated R, which is my least favorite song on the album, maybe my least favorite song. And, you know, I you know, there's something about it. I don't know. I know there's a lot of controversy is saying you're not a big fan of Nick Oliveri. But I don't find much about him redeeming, aside from how good he is at the bass. He's very good on the bass.
It's the immortal sort of separating the artist from the artwork, and yeah, I think if you can do that, I think he did have a very sort of, he was never the most technically proficient bassist, but he definitely had a style and a flair that is hard to replicate, for better or worse,
and an attitude in the live arena that very much fits into. I mean, I mentioned when I said I described Queens of Stone Age live as badass. I don't think they've lost it, but I'd love to have seen them back when Nick and Dave were in the band, just because that's the swagger to being those musicians at that time would have been incredible.
So yeah, I feel like it is a good album. I do agree as well that it does sort of is front heavy with how good it is, but it's not on the level of songs.
It's interesting because I would say I think tracks 1 through 9 astounding. I even like The Blood Is Love, but I do think that's the point at which it starts to drop. And then I think from Blood Is Love, Skin on Skin is not a very good song. I don't enjoy Skin on Skin very much at all. Broken Box takes it back up. Then you got to Kill a Scene There, Man, which takes it down again. I really like how it ends on Long Slow Goodbye. I think Long Slow Goodbye is one of the underrated Queens of the Stone Age songs of all time, to be honest. But it's hard to deny that after Someone's in the Wolf, it does sort of take a little bit of a nosedive, and it pains me to admit it a little bit. Craig, what do you think about Lullabies to Paralyze?
I like Little Sister. You said it's impossible to follow up with songs for the deaf. I always get it wrong. Songs for the deaf. And I think I read somewhere that even Mr. Homme himself was saying how it was just causing him so much stress trying to live up to the hype of this well-regarded thing. So at one point it was just like, no, bollocks to it. I'm just gonna do whatever and see how this plans out. And I feel like, as you mentioned, the band members changed around and all this sort of stuff. Essentially, Songs for the Deaf was a moment in time. And then after that, everything changed. So it's going to be hard to meet the highs that were there. But for me, it's just not as good, and I can't get that one feeling out of my head. You've mentioned about the tracks, Dobby, and is there a sort of track length that is good for a Queens of the Stone Age album? Because it seems like around the 10 mark seems like the best before you get exhausted from the sounds of it.
That's a very interesting question, actually. I would say there might not be an awful lot to disagree with in what you're saying. Like, my favorite album is 10 tracks. I mean, let's look at some of the later ones. I think, maybe 10 is right, and you could take it down to 10 and keep like the rest as bonus tracks, looking at all of these, which feels a bit like sacrilege because there are a lot of these songs past the 10 mark that I do love. If Lullabies to Paralyze were 10 tracks, I think it would not necessarily go toe to toe with Songs for the Deaf, but stand on its own as another masterpiece.
I agree.
Okay, so let's try and rank Lullabies to Paralyze then. I think personally, if I were going to put Queens of the Stone Age on, if I were going to sit and listen to a Queens of the Stone Age album, maybe 5 times out of 10, I would pick Lullabies to Paralyze over Songs for the Deaf. And certainly in October, I'm putting Lullabies to Paralyze on. I love it as an October album. Is
this one of those things where if you're in the fandom, like everyone's just like, yeah, this is the album rather than the one before it? Because I follow Gorillaz fandom and everyone hates Plastic Beach, and I'm just like, what? Why? What's going on?
I think it's part of that thing. It's difficult when an album like Songs for the Deaf exists to take what comes after it, certainly immediately after it, for what it is. You can't help but compare it necessarily, and no one compares. Like I have seen people compare Rated R to Songs for the Deaf. That seems to be a common debate, but no one thinks about the first album in regards to it, or even like Eva Vulgaris compared to Songs for the Deaf. It's the one either side as to what's better.
Why did they have to make such a good album to just annoy all the other albums they did?
Why do they have to just continue to make such good albums for the most part? You know what I mean? They're such a consistently good band. I'm going to put this A. It's A. It's not S tier. There is another album coming. I will probably put S tier, but this is an A.
I can dig it. I would say A, me as well.
I can dig it also, if that's what the phrase we'll be using these days.
Okay, so that's Lullabies to Paralyze into A then. Let's jump forward another couple of years to something very strange. 2007's Eva Vulgaris, which is this my favorite artwork? I don't know. I do really like this artwork. It's really good.
Yeah, it's my favorite for sure.
Yeah.
We didn't even mention the last album's artwork because it was just like,
it's just sort of dark.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Eva Vulgaris, I don't know how to describe this album, to be honest, in terms of sound. I've seen people say it's more electronic. I guess you can kind of see that. I dare say there's just a certain disjointedness to it that really comes to the forefront when it comes to this. A sort of, fuck you, this is what I'm doing and you're going to listen to it. Sort of, you listen to a song like Turning on the Screw, which is just, it feels like a big old listen to this. You like this? And I do. I'm Designer is very strange. Like Josh Homme is doing very weird sort of vocal stylings, talking about, going home and jerking off. I mean,
And how?
And how. It's kind of like a sort of a heavy summer evening to me, I guess. Eva Vulgaris. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. But then I have a weird summer soundtrack in my mind anyway, and all of these albums I would play at the height of summer.
Oh, I think I mostly agree, to be honest. Yeah.
I
really love Eva Vulgaris, because I'm a broken record at this point. I don't know how to describe it really. Again, maybe I sort of view this as a counterpoint to Lullabies to Paralyze more than what comes after it. It sort of feels like a sibling, as it were. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that.
Who's the parent?
Who's the parent?
Yeah.
Maybe Songs for the Deaf is the parent, and we just never found out who the father was.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's what the video for Go for the Flows are all about.
Yeah, it's a tough one to try and explain this one. I think it suffers. It's got
a few. It seems like it's just all of his influences are here. So like you've got the punk, you've got some rock, you've got some blues, and as you said, like a few bit of electro bits here and there.
Yeah.
And I think from the previous albums where it was this stoner rock into, as Tom said, alternative, this seems like we're just going to try some stuff. And this is it, really.
The experimental album. There you go. That's a good way of saying it. So to go on Craig's 10-track Queens of the Stone Age thing, I think there are 2 tracks on the 11-track runtime I could, maybe take off. I'm not overly keen on Suture Up Your Future or River in the Road. Either of you two got songs you're not overly into?
Not so much that way. It's more leaning back into the argument or the conversation about it being a very experimental album. I was really thrown for a loop by the first time I listened to this album. I remember because I remember the 2 songs I knew about it were 3 and 7s and Make It With You. And those 2,
and they're not representative.
Oh, they're not a half and half. They are very different and very middle. Well, not middle of the road, but they're very standard compared to what the rest of the album is. And I was like, wow, I see why they picked them as the singles if they wanted this played on the radio. So, so yeah, I mean, I don't think there's necessarily a bad song. I just don't think, again, it hits the heights of what's come before. I think I love it. I love it for its attitude of trying to be a bit different and try to expand outside of their genre and tropes and whatever. But I do feel like his suffers and is a bit messy because of that.
It's interesting. I like Neil's not here, obviously. I don't want to misquote him, but I think I might be right in saying this is his favorite Queen's album. And anyone who says Eva Vulgaris is their favorite Queen's album, I can totally understand why, as I could with most of these, to be honest. It's definitely not as good as Songs for the Deaf. I wouldn't have it over Lullabies to Paralyze either. Would I listen to it over self-titled or Rated R? That's where it becomes interesting.
For me, like it's the sort of mood you're in, because I feel like at this point we know what Songs for the Deaf is. As you said, this is a bit more all over the place. Maybe that's by design, because that's probably the way he wanted it to be. As we said, like Songs for the Deaf is an onslaught. This is a bit pick and choose what's going to happen next when you first listen to it anyway.
I would also say, I mean, like there's a couple of bonus tracks, like Eva Vulgaris, the title track wasn't even included on the album. I think Eva Vulgaris is one of the best songs of the era, to be honest. And
Trent Reznor in the house.
I mean, put Josh Homme and Trent Reznor together on anything and I will have a wet dream. You've also got The Fun Machine Took a Shit and Died, which is another astounding song which wasn't even included on the album. What is that about? I would probably, and again, maybe this is sacrilegious, I'm sure this is going to be a controversial tier listing video, this one, because I think everyone is all over the place in terms of Queen's fandom. I think I would probably put this A. I'd probably take this over Rated R and self-titled, but I don't think you'll agree with me on that.
Nope. I put this in B.
I would. You're saying you'd take this over Lullabies or after Lullabies?
No, I'd take Lullabies over this.
Okay. Because I would take Lullabies over. I would take this over Lullabies.
Interesting.
What a fun conundrum we're all in.
So perhaps it has to sit in the middle then. Hang on, where were you putting this, Tom? Sorry.
High
I
B.
would put this in B.
High B, above rate, probably not above rated R.
No, below rated R. Below rated R.
So are we gonna? Is the middle below?
I think the middle
Lullabies?
therefore is. I
Or is
think
it
the
high
middle
B?
therefore is. If you were going to put it above Lullabies, I was going to put it below Lullabies. Tom's going to put it below R. It's either high B or low A.
Should we say low A?
Yeah, if you want to do that.
We can't have them all in B, Tom.
Yeah.
All right.
Low A. Okay. So now we come to. I nearly started playing music there. That'd have been good, wouldn't it? Now we come to the first big gap of Queens of the Stone Age's career. 6 years between Eva Vulgaris and Like Clockwork. During that time, I mean, Craig mentioned they played a fan voted set list in Glastonbury. They did a reissue, I believe, of the first Queens of the Stone Age album, and they toured that, and Josh Homme nearly died. Which brings us to the very dark and very masterful 2013's Like Clockwork, which is not just my favorite Queens of the Stone Age album, but dare I say, my second favorite album of all time. I adore Like Clockwork through and through with every fucking cell in my brain. I know every like I love Like Clockwork. This album front to back is just even more of a piece of art than Songs for the Deaf to me. I like the music is. I think there's perhaps a scrappiness to Songs of the Deaf that comes with the youth of it. Like Clockwork feels like someone aging into themselves, really understanding what it is they want to make and doing it flawlessly. I love Like Clockwork. Craig,
do you think that this album probably just connected with you on a way that a lot of people have not had that connection with a type of album?
Oh, I'm certain it probably has. Yeah.
Did you hear about the backstory of how this album was created and the themes that are within it?
Oh, the multiple different ones, because there have been several over the years as to what actually happened. Yeah.
Yeah. I do not have the love that you do for this album, Dobby, but I'm going to go out on a limb here on this video, and I'm going to say all of these albums are pretty good.
Yeah.
And I had a nice time with this one. The Vampire of Time and Memory, I think, was something that I enjoyed. It stuck out to me more than the others, and I think My God Is the Sun, was that a single? Because I remember hearing that quite often. But those were the two standouts for me. But once again, this is just a cracking rock album, some may say.
Tom,
I agree that this is a very, very good album. I think it's definitely that maturity is shining through more. The only thing that I think holds this album back, and again, I'm not sure if this is unfair to say, because I don't know how much sort of worth or credence we give to the time it was made as opposed to just listening to the album in isolation. I think this is the first album where, or at least the first time I really noticed, where they hadn't really done anything that hadn't already been done before, which is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with refining what you've done, but something like Songs is revolutionary and really does sort of, is genre defining in a sense. This is just a good rock album to me, and maybe nothing more.
So Craig, had you listened to it at the time when it came out, 2013?
Probably.
Yeah. Tom,
yeah.
You said 2014.
Yeah, I listened to it properly around 2014, I would say. And
at that time, we were just like, yeah, this is right. And then you just moved on to something else.
No, I definitely listened to it a lot, particularly after seeing it live. It's like, oh yeah, like songs like Ocean are just, are real catchy, and the songmanship is fantastic. I will never take that away from it, but I just don't find myself going back to it as much as any of the other, or any of the ones we've talked about before, bar maybe the self-titled.
Interesting. I mean, I won't deny there's obviously the major personal connection to this one for me. I mean, 2013, when this album came out, was a banger of a year. There are so many good albums that came out in 2013. Maybe even a year that is going to be formative, what was formative for me, I should say. as a standing point in terms of music and my musical taste. I mean, I love it when Queens of the Stone Age go a little bit dark. Lullabies to Paralyze already, even bits. I mean, throughout they've always done a little bit of darkness. I think seeing the darkness truly shine through vocally, with Josh actually trying to, say, here's what's going on with me at the moment for the first time. Because I think lyrically, Queens of the Stone Age, Josh Homme especially, has always been able to turn a phrase, but I don't think it necessarily always comes to the forefront across the music for me. I think on this, everything really, the lyrics really speak to me on this album. I like, you met Tom also sort of gave a little bit of a criticism. This is the first time where you don't think they've done anything different. And I think, like, you say that, and I do kind of see what you're saying. I think, Keep Your Eyes Peeled feels like it could go on Lullabies to Paralyze. Smooth Sailing could probably sit in Eva Vulgaris quite happily. But then you come to something like I Appear Missing, which is just incredible. It's dare I say, maybe Josh Homme's best songwriting is on I Appear Missing. It's just such a tour de force of a song. It is just astounding to me that anyone could write something like that. Where would you look at putting this album then, you two?
I think it's an A. I definitely think it's an A, but I just wouldn't say it was as esserific as I think you're saying.
Esserific? Is that saying? We haven't touched on, like, this feels like you say it's a good rock album. It doesn't feel as disjointed as the previous one, and that it could be to do with the time and having a clearer vision. When you have a major accident, it makes you reevaluate stuff in your life, doesn't it? And it gives you a clearer picture about what you will be going to do next. And I think this album sums it up perfectly. With that in mind, I would have no qualms with a high A or low S.
I'm never going into this thinking we were going to be putting it above Songs for the Deaf. To be clear, there are 3 people here. If it were just me, it would be.
Is there?
I was very much expecting it would be, either below Songs for the Deaf in S or in A somewhere. I think I would take this over Lullabies and Eva Vulgaris. I would personally take this over Songs for the Deaf, but I understand. I would definitely agree that Songs for the Deaf as an album is probably better, and it's the personal connection for me.
I feel like you've given us the rundown of why it is so good, and I think that should be incorporated into
given time and the ability to think out my words, I could essay this album into oblivion and just make people sick of it, to be honest. I think here trying to not go on forever and just sit here fanboying, and also, I mean, I find when I'm doing these tier lists, I struggle to find the words, and then I'll come to it like an hour later. I'm like, oh, I should have said that. I want to put it low S. Craig says high A or low S. Tom, you're going A.
Yes, I'm going A.
Shall we put it low S? Sure, your decision, Tom, I think, at this point.
Fine, go on then.
That's the ticket. It's my birthday.
Is it?
No, it's not my birthday. Not for a while yet. Okay, well, that brings us to our last album, and I think this one might be a bit easier, to be honest. 2017's Villains is produced by Mark Ronson. It's kind of like a Queens of the Stone Age. I mean, they were describing it as meets disco at the time. I can kind of see it in parts, but I think for the most part, it's kind of sedate in a way. I want to caveat, I really do love Villains. It was my favorite album of the year it came out. I don't know if I'd necessarily stand by that now, because it was also the year Mass Seduction by St. Vincent came out, and that album's great. I don't want to be the person who says, oh, the most recent album is their least good, but I am saying that.
Yeah, I think I'm saying that as well.
Villains is my least favorite Queens of the Stone Age album, and it pains me to say it because I do really love it. I think Feet Don't Fail Me, which is the opening song, really great, and I think across the board I do like all of these songs. But yeah, it's kind of falls flat for me, and I think we're in retrospect we're looking sort of at Josh Homme and who he is nowadays and what he's been over the last few years. Looking back, at the sort of 2017, 2018 Villains tour, I think we can sort of see that perhaps he wasn't in the best place at this point in time. I think you can kind of see it, but I think, I think to the way you used to do music video, and you can see the tongue is still firmly in cheek, and he was still very much having a fun time. I'm just not sure. I think perhaps the best way I could put this is Villains feels like an album Josh Homme made for himself rather than for Queens of the Stone Age fans.
I can see that. I think this is an album where I didn't actually realize that Mark Ronson had produced this, because I was going to say the production on this sucks, and I think we've definitely had albums before in their discography that are, rough and coarse, and that definitely plays into the attitude and the benefit of the package as a whole. Whereas I think this one just leaves it muddy and doesn't allow anything to pop out, and it just sounds very flat and boring and muted.
When it comes to Queens of the Stone Age, the thing I want first and foremost, the thing I love first and foremost, is Josh Homme's guitar tone, and it's not really present on this album. You get his guitar playing, you can kind of hear it, but I think a lot of the time it's sort of not necessarily muted, but it fades into the background a little bit more. And like I say, it becomes a bit more sedate on a song like Hideaway or Fortress, which are really good songs. It's not what I want from Queens of the Stone Age as much as I like it. Let's go to Craig then. Craig, what do you think about Villains?
I really like this album. Thanks for asking.
Really good.
I wouldn't describe it as muddy. I would describe it as like a nice rock party. I just think it's a good time. And then when it's not a good time, that's when Fortress plays. And even then, I'm like, this is dramatic. I like the opening, whatever instrument that is, because I'm an idiot that doesn't know what instrument that is. Maybe it's strings, maybe it's a horn, who knows? But just the drama of it.
And lyrically, I mean, Fortress is, the lyric, like, if ever your fortress, is it fades? I can't remember.
Fades or caves?
Might be caves. You're always safe in mine. It's a beautiful lyric. Like, this is what I mean when I say I think it's perhaps an album Josh made for himself more than everyone else. And I've got no problem with people doing that. You want to make something, it's your art at the end of the day, and I'm just here as an audience, as it were. It just doesn't resonate with me quite as much. And let's be clear, like the songs when they were played live, I thought were really popping. They were never as good as the other songs, but I thought they were a good time.
I think there is a certain energy to this album that isn't in the other albums.
Yeah.
However,
it's probably the Queens of the Stone Age album that feels the most different from the rest. And
I probably have some reverence because this is the one I've probably heard the most since it was released.
I was recently at your place for a housewarming party, and the following day you put Villains on, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
because it's nice having in the background, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. I'm not lying. It's there. There is proof. I didn't know until earlier that this was a Mark Ronson joint. So you could see why the guy that made Uptown Funk would maybe create something that's a bit more dancey, a bit more full of energy. What you say, this is an album more for Josh himself rather than the Queens of the Stone Age. Like it is his band, isn't it? Like that is it. He's been the member who's been there since the beginning. So I try to think, what would a solo thing from him look like? And you're saying it would probably look a bit more like this.
I think so. I think, rock artists tend to sort of reach, late 40s, early 50s. And I think whether they had done in their youth or not, they'll start going back and listening to, the Beatles or other disco bands from when they were young. And I think it starts to bleed into their music, and perhaps they'll do an album that sort of feels that way. And when it's done well, it can end up being a Villains. When it's not done well, it ends up being Father of All Motherfuckers by Green Day. You know what I mean?
But I was thinking Green Day, because you don't want to be in your late 50s, releasing something like Dookie. So it's like one of those things where it is the argument, well, this sounds too much like the other thing, or is the argument you've changed too much, because they both have negative connotations. It's a hard line, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, if albums like Villains are what we're going to get from Queens of the Stone Age for the future, and to be clear, I think it's going to be a while before we get anything from Queens of the Stone Age, to be honest, given everything that's going on at the moment. I think it's likely he's probably going to end up becoming more introspective lyrically and stuff, just based on the comings and goings of the last couple of years. I wouldn't be sad if this is what we were going to get for the rest of the Queens of the Stone Age's career. I don't think it is what we're going to get for the rest of their career, but I wouldn't be sad if it was.
But you accept that probably your favorite album was the creation of something that was life-changing for the person writing it, so it's probably not going to get something like that ever again.
No, and I don't think very few bands have their immediate peak and then will peak again. You've got Green Day, American Idiot. You've got, I mean, depending on who you ask, Foo Fighters had the 90s and then disappeared. Well, not disappeared, but sort of went quiet for a bit, just releasing good singles. And then Wasting Light came out, and it was like, wow, okay, they can still do it. I don't know if Queens of the Stone Age, because it's tough for me because I just view them so much as one flowing entity. I guess for my taste, you could argue Songs of Death was a peak, then it went down, then Like Clockwork was a peak. But I'd prefer to say no, they were just continuing to be pretty consistently great. To the wider public, and maybe even just other people who love rock music, I think it's Songs for the Deaf, and the rest are maybe singles or things they've heard on the radio and not allowed else if they don't specifically listen to Queens of the Stone Age. I mean, from this album, what Way You Used to Do was the single. I don't know if anything else went to radio, as it were. I don't know how this album did charts wise, but I do think, this is the one people would talk about the least.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say. How this did, it got number one in loads of charts. Made silver here in UK, and was mostly good, positive reviews from what I can see. So.
When it came out, I was like, yes, new Queens of the Stone Age, I love this. 5 years later, nearly 5 years later, I do look at this and I think, yes, it's my least favorite. So let's try and rank Villains then. Now, it feels unfair to put it in C, but I think that's probably where it's going to go.
Yeah, I was thinking just exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
What if we put it at the lowest of Bs?
The lowest of B. I mean, we could do.
Tom, you the icy cold stare of a Tom here.
But by that point, you are very much splitting hairs as to, it's still going to be at the bottom one way or the other.
I think we put it in C just because, we can. I think we've made the point, that this album is an album we enjoy. Like me and Craig, at the very least, enjoy it. It's just not up to snuff necessarily to the rest of their catalogue.
See, Tom hates Mark Ronson because he can never get hair like him. So this is so this is just another notch against you, Mark. I hope you're watching.
You know what? There's some Mark Ronson stuff I do like. I'm just not overly keen on him with Queens of the Stone Age. We'll put it that way, shall we? Okay, so that should now leave us with something of a tier list on our hands. Do you want to recount it for us, Craig?
Yes. So in C we have Villains. At low end B we have Queens of the Stone Age, self-titled. In B we have Rated R. In A, at the low end, we've got Eva Vulgaris. And A, we've got Lullabies. In the S tier, which we've called Sick, 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 we have, what's it? Oh,
Like Clockwork.
Like Clockwork, thank you very much. And in S tier, the most surprising one of all is Songs for the Deaf.
Who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thunk it? You know what, truth be told, I thought we might have to do a bit of shifting about looking at it now. I think that's pretty fair as a ranking, to be honest. Anything you'd change?
Out of all the decisions we've made, the one thing I am glad we did was have you host. So, but no. As far as the tier list goes, I think this three men who like this band. I think this is good.
Tom?
Yeah, I'll agree. I was trying to think of a Three Lions thing when you said three men, but let's go with that.
Three Lions. Wow. Very good, Tom.
That sounded like sarcasm.
We'll put this one out into the ether, this tier listing, and I think, when it comes to Queens of the Stone Age, I think people rank these albums so differently, like not just to us, but to each other. And I think, I'm very interested to see what people think. And their own rankings. But hey, keep it civil, eh? You know, we ain't here to hurt you.
So, like, the one thing I would take away after listening to all of these is like, these are all good albums. People should listen to them. I think even though they have sold millions and millions of copies of albums, this is an underrated band, and people need to listen to this band more.
It's funny, like they're started to get bigger. Like Clockwork, they started headlining festivals properly. I think they might have been doing it in Europe anyway, but then Villains kind of cemented that. And you know, I mean, Villains is, you know, by our logic, our least favorite, and I'd still say it's a dang good album for the most part. Yeah, I wish everyone listened to Queens of the Stone Age. I want more people to listen to them all the time forever. I guess it's time to wrap up then. Is there anything we want to plug?
Just the website, I guess, from my point of view. Just go to upsidedownshire.com. We've got other tier lists on there. We've got other cool articles, album reviews, whatever you want to find, you'll probably find it there. And also drop a subscribe here at UDS Music. It's a good time. You'll find interviews with cool bands and just general good music all round.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Craig, and thanks to me for doing this. We've had a lovely time. I certainly have. I love talking about Queens of the Stone Age, as heart-wrenching as trying to rank these albums is. I don't know what we'll be doing next. You'll see us again sometime, I'm sure. I've been Dobby.
Tom, it's my name.
I've been Craig.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.